Welcome to the Magnificent Marketing Podcast, where we interview the top marketing experts in the world and keep you up to date on all the changes and best practices to help you grow your business and stay on the cutting edge. Welcome to the show.
Hello, everyone. I'm here today with Robert Rose, and Robert is the Chief Troublemaker for the Content Advisory, which is the education and consulting division for the Content Marketing Institute. Robert helps develop content and customer experience strategies for large enterprises such as the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Oracle, Allstate Insurance, McCormick Spices, Capital One, AT&T, and UPS, helping them create powerful customer experiences through digital media. As an author, Robert's book, Experiences, The Seventh Era of Marketing, has been called a call to arms and a self-help guide for creating the experiences that consumers will fall in love with. He co-hosts the podcast This Old Marketing with Joe Pulizzi, frequently a top 20 marketing podcast on iTunes and more than 1 million downloads since its launch. Robert's book with Joe, Managing Content Marketing, is widely considered the owner's manual of the content marketing process. It's been translated into multiple languages and spent 2 weeks as a top 10 marketing book on Amazon.com. And today we are going to be talking about content marketing. Before you start, this is where to begin. Robert, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Had to have you on here ever since I saw you. Well, I've seen you multiple times at the Content Marketing World, but to see you live in a person in an intimate setting for that master's class made me say, "Hey, we've got to share this guy, get this, what's in this guy's head out there to the world because it's some great stuff." And just a quick little plug, anyone who sees that master class out there that they're advertising, do it. It's fun and super educational. So, yeah, very excited. Very excited. Yeah, no problem. So, just to kind of get going, let's kind of just backtrack to the beginning here for those new to content marketing. Can you just give a brief synopsis of what content marketing is and why it, can be effective?
Sure. It's as we say on the at Content Marketing Institute, we have, as you might expect, lots of definitions out there. And so when you see the common definition, what it'll say is the consistent use of original curated content that is created in order to affect a change of behavior in a consumer. And then that's too broad and it's too it's probably too buzzwordy and all of that. But so just to simplify it, it's how do we create value with content in an owned media experience that helps our customers do something in order for them to basically come to the conclusion that we're somebody worth doing business with. And so that owned media experience is the really important thing there. This is not about creating advertising where we're renting space from a publisher in order to persuade somebody to do something, nor is it shared or earned media where we're trying to put something out into social media and hope people share it virally and have it go out there into the world. This is where we're bringing people into our experience, the one that we control and own, in order for us to aggregate an audience that we can monetize in multiple ways. In other words, we can learn from them, we can converse with them, we can talk with them, we can turn them and involve them into leads and opportunities. This is our opportunity to more effectively reach a consumer that, because of technology and social media and all of the other media fragmentation, is becoming harder to reach through other methods. And so it's an approach. It's not a campaign. It's an approach or a function in the business that helps us develop owned media in order to attract customers into our space.
Gotcha. And I know getting going here is where people most likely make their biggest mistakes, at the very beginning, just getting everything set up correctly. So and that's really what we're concentrating and talking about today. So would like to, get going there and have you, talk a little bit about, before you produce that very first piece of content, what are the items a marketer needs to do or consider to set themselves up for success?
Well, the first one is to understand why you're doing it in the first place. And so what happens typically is the biggest mistake that gets made is, oh, great, yes, let's do some content, and literally it is about that informal. As somebody goes, yeah, let's do some content. We'll do content. Let's do some content. And ultimately what that becomes is simply an alternative form of whatever else we are doing, right? So if we're creating brochures or one-sheets or, marketing slicks or, websites or advertisements, ultimately we go, let's do some content, and the content becomes just another way to create a one-sheet or a slick or a website or an advertisement. And we ultimately, there's no strategy behind it. There's no goal behind it. And so, and some of it may work, by the way, because quite frankly, content is can be a little more effective than those other things because they're going to generate value. So we end up saying, hey, let's write a white paper, or let's write an article, or let's do some social media, or let's do this, wonderful, infographic or something like that. And it becomes a one-off. And we end up doing another one-off and another one-off and another one-off and another one-off. And ultimately, some of them may be okay. Some of them may work all right, but there's no way to scale that, and there's no way to ultimately drive a strategy from that because you're just simply creating an alternative form of collateral material, of marketing collateral material. And some of it may be great and some of it may not be, but that's not a strategy. And so the very first thing to do is to ask yourself, why do we want to do this? What is it we're trying to solve for? Are we trying to drive more awareness for our new product or our new company, or are we trying to help the lead nurturing process and pull people through our funnel more effectively? Are we trying to solve a customer churn problem where we have a loyalty issue? What are we trying to solve for? Because that will give you the strategy of why you're creating this owned media experience, this blog, digital magazine, resource center, academy, print magazine, whatever the expression of that idea becomes. The very first thing to do is to say, why are we doing this? Now let's lay out a plan of how we would do this if we were to build an owned media experience that would support that. And that owned media experience is then made up of all of those individual pieces that you might normally start from.
Understood. Now, so basically, you got to find your purpose. You got to find your goals. So, do you have some good exercises to help a company or a marketer find their purpose? I mean, it's obviously the why, to dig into that. But do you have any other advice to help give somebody to help them find that purpose?
Yeah. There's a simple way that I look at it, which is when I'm working with a client or someone who wants to figure out that purpose is, there's that sort of new idealized shape of the funnel that we see so often these days. The one that's shaped like an hourglass, right? Where it's wide at the top, where we have awareness and then consideration, and it gets narrower and narrower as we get down to the customer part. And then as it widens out again, it's more upsell, cross-sell, loyalty, evangelism, et cetera. And what I'll definitely do is say to a customer, tell me where on that spectrum it hurts the most. Because then you can segment, just a very simple segmentation of that funnel into 3 steps, right? 1, subscribe, which is usually at the top of the funnel. Then win a customer at the middle of the funnel to sort of the lower levels of the funnel. And then grow, which is sort of the very lower, so after they become customers, loyalty, creating an advocate for your brand. And then basically wherever your challenge, where does it hurt the most, wherever that challenge is, that can be the place to start, right? So where are you having the most difficult time right now in marketing? Is it at that awareness stage, or is it at that win stage, or is it at that grow stage? And then once you poke into there and you say, yes, that's where we want to focus, well, there's our purpose, right? There's where we can focus and really have a true strategy to what is it we can create that can help that customer through that part of their journey and ultimately make a decision in our favor that helps us optimize that part of our funnel. And so if it's a win situation, in other words, you're pointing right to that lead nurturing portion of your funnel, great. What kind of owned media experience could we create to help drive trust, or to help drive deeper education, or to help drive deeper participation with the customer at that part of their journey, to help our salespeople to have more interaction, to help our brand have more interaction, and developing an owned media experience that really optimizes that part of their journey. That's where you find your purpose, is understanding where along the buyer's journey or the engagement journey you can actually optimize, and then focus right in there. And if it's somewhere at the awareness level, great. If it's somewhere at the win level, great. And if it's somewhere at the customer growth, what most people make the mistake of is saying, let's create an owned media experience and figure out how it addresses all of the parts of the buyer's journey. And that just doesn't work.
That's interesting. I've never heard anybody put it that way, Robert. That's very, very interesting. Now, this might be impossible to answer, so just tell me that if it is. But how would one find that spot? Like, you know, I mean, is it an analytical metric thing that you're looking at? Is it just a feel and talking to the people in the company, or how have you identified that? Because logically, crystal clear, right? But technically and execution-wise, a little bit more difficult to wrap my brain around that. So do you have any advice on that?
Sure. Well, you know, let's hope that you have some inkling, right, of your marketing status as it is today. If you don't, you've got bigger problems than content marketing, and so we need to take it 4 steps back even from that. But if you can look at sort of certainly your analytics, right? If you understand that the big problem right now is that your sales guys are complaining that they're not getting enough leads, and the business isn't getting enough leads. And once you get those, this happens to me all the time. I'll talk to a client and they'll go, the funny thing is, once we get a lead in there, well, the sales guys take care. Our close rate is fantastic. We just don't have enough leads. I know exactly where your problem is then. Another thing might be sales guys like, yeah, we're getting leads, but they're just not very good. They're just not very good leads, and we need better leads. Great. I know where your problem is. We're getting leads, we're closing business, and we've got customers in, but you know what? We're having a tough time saving these customers, right? They're sticking around for a while. We can't make them, not go to the competition, or they're getting off our demo, or they've downloaded a free trial, or whatever it is. You've either got that gut feel, as you say, sort of where things really suck at the moment, or where your salespeople are telling you it's horrible, or when you look at your web analytics and you're seeing that your e-commerce isn't performing very well. Well, where is it? Are people dropping out at the shopping cart level, or are you just not getting enough traffic, or what is it, right? So let's sit in a room with all the people that matter, is our management, our sales, our customer service, the people that really deal with this on a day-to-day basis, and let's figure out where does it hurt the most, and then let's build something there. Because that's the key. If we focus there, one, we have little to lose, right? This is an innovative new process. It's unlikely we're going to be great at it to start with, but starting there enables us to at least optimize that piece of it. That if we can start to even just make some dent in that, maybe it doesn't hurt as much. Maybe we can make some, effectiveness or improvement. And quite frankly, for those that are thinking, where do I make the business case? Well, that's going to be the easiest place to make your business case, is the place where it's hurting the most right now.
Gotcha. Wow, that's good stuff, Robert. Good stuff. Okay, so now it feels like, you identify that, you're getting closer to your purpose. It feels like we're getting closer to creating, our content marketing mission. Can you speak on the fundamental questions that need to be answered here so you can nail that down?
Yeah. So the key is that once you've figured out where you want to focus and where where it hurts the most and what your purpose is, well, now we need to look at 4 things, right? We need to look at 1, great. What is our goal in that? What is our goal? Is it if it's to drive more leads, drive better leads, drive higher quality leads, drive more traffic, whatever it is, we're pulling those basically we're widening the funnel at that particular part of what is our goal there? What are we trying to drive with this solution? The second thing, and we write that out, we're trying to increase leads by 10%, whatever, very specific, writing that goal down. And 2, who is the audience that can support that goal? Now, we could talk for another hour about the difference between audiences and buyers, because it's not always a buyer in that whatever part of the journey you're looking to solve for. Sometimes it's a buyer, but sometimes, quite frankly, it can be an influencer, or it can be part of someone, and account-based marketing is all the rage these days. Finding the person or persons, but better person, one audience, that can help support the optimization of that part of the funnel and support that goal that you created. And that's where persona development comes in, and that's where we're looking at our audiences and understanding what it is they need, what value does that audience need. And that leads us to the third part of a content mission, which would be, once we understand who, we start asking ourselves, great, what is that person? What value can we provide to that person? Separate and discrete from our product values. So it doesn't have to do with your product or your brand. It has to do with what value can we provide that customer at that part of their journey that helps them through that part of their journey. In other words, do we need to inspire them? Do we need to educate them? Do we need to entertain them? Do we need to give them a how-to? Do we need to give them a wonderful, wonderful set of options that enables them to do their job more readily or more professionally, or whatever it is? What value, separate and discrete from our product or service, can we offer this person through the use of content to help them? And then fourth, what is it that makes that, the way we would do it, different? In other words, what is our differentiator for that value? In other words, how would, there's tons of ways that they can get this value, perhaps, but what makes us different? How would we do this in a different way? How would we offer this value to them that surprises them and or educates them in a unique way that is unique to our approach, unique to the way that we think of the world? And if you can identify those four things, man, you've got a really strong content mission, and you've got a reason to now create that owned media experience that delivers on all of those promises.
Okay, that's awesome. Now, to touch on what you said about unique, right? That alone could possibly scare people away, and I've heard tons and tons of people talk about this. I think Marcus Sheridan talks about it a ton. They haven't heard it from you, because to feel unique in this day and age with, there's tons and tons of similar types of companies, right? There's tons and tons of topics that are being spoken, not just have been spoken about, period, but are probably being spoken about today, right? The same one. So that could feel a little daunting to be like, well, we could have our perspective, but to be truly different, that's going to be, one of a kind, unique. That could almost be impossible. So, is it just your tone, your spin on it, your personal opinion, having the doctor or whatever, give his opinion on something? Is that unique? Is that the kind of unique enough that you're talking about? Or are you saying you really got to come up with, your one of a kind, spin on it? Do you kind of see what I'm asking to help people who are in a common industry but still want to do this?
Yes, I absolutely do. And so there's well, the first sort of, not to be discouraging, but nobody said it was going to be easy. Right. This is where you get this is where you get paid the big bucks to be creative. But beyond that, there is a more satisfying answer to that, which is, look, it's a spectrum for sure. And the more you can come up with something unique, and Marcus Sheridan has got a great idea, right? He says, let's answer every question our customer could ever have about our product or service, and that's wonderful. But what if you're in a business that, quite frankly, every question on the internet has already been answered, right? If you're in real estate or automobile sales or car loans or, basically where recipes, if you're a food company, recipes are a great one, right, for a food company, because it's like, I talked to a food company the other day, and they're like, yeah, we've got great recipes on our site, and it's not working. And I said, right, because nobody can find recipes on the internet, right? They're like, well, okay, I get it. But what can we bring to recipes that actually is about us? And if you're struggling with how you're different in the marketplace versus everybody out there, and again, that goes back to our original thing, you may have bigger problems than content marketing. You've got to figure out, you've already figured out, hopefully, in your marketing plan and your brand, why you're different, why your company is different than other companies out there. And it may be a regional thing. It may be a national thing. It may be a global thing, to your point, it may be simply a tone. It may be an attitude. We sell cars with attitude, right? We sell cars, in a way that nobody else has sold cars before. So what is that attitude or tone, and how do you apply that to the education that may already be out there? And so when people are finding that, you'll find the people that actually align with that attitude or that tone. So it's a spectrum. What I would, the caution is that, and you'll know it when you see it. If you start creating content and you go do Google searches and you start looking at other content that is addressing the same topic as you are, and you can't really tell the difference between your content and the other content, in other words, you could pretty much just slap your logo on top of their content and they the same, that's when you should say, no, this isn't going to work, because it's just not. You're just creating more noise in the ocean. And so you've got to figure out a way to differentiate yourself in the ocean, or don't do it. You can't figure, that's why it's one of the 4 pillars here, is because if you can't figure out how your content is going to be different, then don't waste your time. Don't do this until you can figure that part out, because otherwise you're just spewing more content into the ocean, and quite frankly, yeah, you might get lucky one day and get found and get clicked on and stuff like that, but it's not going to be the exponential, wonderful optimization of that part of the funnel that you're hoping to be. It is challenging, it is hard, and finding differentiation these days is really difficult, but it's critical to do if you're going to succeed with this.
Okay, awesome. Now, I've also, in regards to the audience, and good stuff. In regards to the audience, I've heard you talk about like 3 levels of subscribers. Can you touch on that as we're defining audience?
That's right. So, you know, the value here that we're creating, remember, whether we're trying to optimize for some subscribe, you know, sort of awareness, building an audience goal, whether we're trying to nurture leads through the funnel in a win sort of purpose, or whether we're trying to grow an audience and the one that will advocate our services and products to their friends and family and all of that. Despite where that may fall, your purpose may fall along that spectrum. The real key here is when we look at subscribers as an approach, because the audience is the value. That's the key thing to remember about content marketing. The audience is the value. The content is merely a bridge to get to that audience. The audience is the value. That's the asset that we're building over time. It's the relationship with somebody that wants to talk with us. That's the whole reason we're doing this. So many times what will happen is that either because you're in a financial services company, there's regulatory issues, you're in a pharmaceutical company and you're tough, you know, it's tough to do this, or quite frankly, you can't afford or you haven't built a business case quite strong enough for a technology solution that would allow for an email database, or you're just not there from a maturity level yet. Basically, sometimes there are reasons, and good reasons, that you can't quite take that explicit, you know, subscription yet. Maybe you don't want to because you don't feel like you've quite got the topic nailed or whatever it is. So the 3 levels of subscriber are a beginning and an evolution for you to follow in order to start to build the case for taking an explicit subscription. And so the first level is what I call implicit subscription. Basically, we can imply subscribers by the way that we look at content consumption. In other words, we look at our blog, and we don't take email newsletters yet. Maybe we haven't built a business case for it yet or whatever, but we can look at things like returning visitors. We can look at, you know, returning versus new. We can look at RSS subscriptions and see how many people are subscribing via RSS. We can look at the way that people are interacting and how many page views they look at. We can look at that new versus old. In other words, returning visitors view 2 or 3 articles, new visitors look at 1 article. Well, that's a reason. Now we've got an interesting set of data, and we can start using the content, and we can be clever about content to say, let's start putting out content that either increases new users or increases returning users, and we can create a strategy around that, because that gives us some indication and understanding and insight that we're actually reaching an audience with value. We're actually reaching an audience that wants to come back. So that gives us a business case to say, you know what, we actually need to be able to understand this audience more deeply. Then we can go to the second level, which I call behavioral subscriptions, which is we can start doing things like polls and surveys. So for example, we can look at polls and surveys for those returning visitors versus new users. We can take a poll and if we do this in a clever enough way, we can start to discern things like, where are they on their engagement, you know, journey? Where are they on their buy journey? Are we actually targeting the right user? Are we actually targeting someone who's just trying to answer a question? Are we getting people who are interested? We can ask for editorial suggestions. We can start interacting with this audience, and polls and surveys are one. There are certainly many ways to do this, like little apps and games or, whatever you want to do, but basically bringing in interaction where the subscription data that's coming in is all behavioral based. They're not giving us any personal information, not yet, but they're giving us information because they're there and they want to give us information about things that we're interested in knowing. And then the third is the explicit subscription, where we're actually taking an email address or a physical address or some set of personally identifiable information in exchange for the subscription to this wonderful value that we're creating through content. And it can be an evolution. Each one of those levels can give you insight that help you determine what kind of value content is providing to your business. Because the whole point here is that as we develop and build an audience, the audience is what provides the value. And so looking at them and segmenting them of their behavior versus what do people that we pull in from advertising or from Google ads or from display ads or from trade shows or from those where we send them a free Starbucks card, how do they behave versus those that we're giving content to behave? And chances are, if everything works out like I've watched it work out a million times, those that you're giving great experiences to through content tend to do things that are more in your favor. They tend to be better customers. They tend to buy more. They tend to be more loyal. They tend to understand and want to engage with you because you're already giving them value. And so that can build a business case for you to put in that marketing automation system or the email system or build a bigger blog or to build a bigger print magazine or to expand it into a physical event and basically help you build a bigger business and better business case for driving a content marketing program by looking at those 3 levels of subscription as an evolution.
That's awesome. Do you have like an example off the top of your head of where you've identified a not so common audience, or level of subscriber? Because I don't hear that talked about a lot. So I don't think it's like super common, vernacular out there about that. So do you have like a real life example on, identifying something and this is what was the pivot or the action that happened after that once you noticed, either returning visitors, actions from returning visitors or new visitors or anything like that?
Yeah, here's a great one. I worked for a technology company or a software company, and they had this thing where they had a registration gate up, like, many technology companies do. In order to get this white paper, you got to put in your personal information. And you go and you sign in, you get your white paper, very transactional sort of thing. And they started to look at the analytics of where, basically people who registered and downloaded the white paper, where did they go next? And so they looked at the web analytics and they found that those people who registered basically then went off and to this product A site, one of their product sites, were sections of the website. And so they decided based on that they should do, and by the way, they noticed that most of their traffic for that was coming through this Google ad that they purchased, right? And so they went, great, let's double down on the Google ads. So let's, basically spend more money there, and let's double down on product A's microsite and build it out and make it really replete and all of that, because that's where the traffic flow is going right now. And they did that, and it was wonderful, and they went great, and they built all this traffic. But what they noticed was, as the traffic was building, the leads started getting worse and worse and worse. They started getting more mickeymouse@gmail.com. They started getting more give me the damn white paper at AOL.com and all of that. And the leads started to it actually started to degrade quite severely over time. Then somebody said, you know what, we should look at this. We tried this thing a year ago, and we kind of gave up on it, where we actually created this ebook where the call to action we gave away the ebook, just gave it away. And the call to action was subscribe to this email newsletter where we'll give you more stuff like this. And they tried it and basically gave up on it because the quantity wasn't there. And they went and looked and they started to segment that. They looked at the analytics there and they segmented that sort of, 6 months out where they had done that. What they noticed was something very stark, which was, yes, there was fewer of them. There were fewer. But the thing is, the quality was so much higher. The quality was so much higher for those that subscribed. There were real email addresses. There were real names. There was real phone numbers there based on the fact that you were giving them something of value, and ultimately that they were actually subscribing to something that they would get in the future. So they were giving the data rather than us gathering the data. And then a really interesting thing happened too, because then they said, well, where are those people coming from? Those people were coming from social, organic, and trade shows, actually. And so all their doubling down on Google was basically, you know, a sort of a fool's errand, right? Where the value for them was to double down on promoting content through social, promoting content through their trade shows, and promoting content through organic, and having people come in that way. Yes, there were fewer of them, but they were much higher value. Building that audience for them provided much higher value, and so doubling down on that actually built them a business case to say, we should kill the resource center and make this a digital magazine that we just give away, because for them it was organic. Now, that's not a prescription, that's just an example.
No, that's just an example, sure. Yeah.
But it's an example of how understanding that people who, when you create something gated, it's not that I don't ever believe in gated content, but when you're gating content as a transaction, you're gathering data and people go, yeah, give me the damn white paper. I just want it. I'm not necessarily a customer yet, but yet we look at that data in the same way. Versus people who are giving you data because they love what you're doing and they want more of it, that's a different value there. There's a different value to be able to do that. And this technology company realized that in spades.
Well, that's what they say, test and track and adjust,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's why I always, preface this to say, hey, can you give me an example, but understand that there's no one-size-fits-all whatsoever, and you gotta do what's right for you specifically, but you gotta dig in. But that was a phenomenal example. Well, cool. All right, to kind of move on to your step 3 of getting everything set up. I believe it's the story. Can you give some pointers to our listeners on helping them find their story?
Yeah, this is my favorite part because it's the most creative part, and it's the most, it's the one where, quite frankly, we give up the easiest because we inevitably default to more about our product, more about our brand, and let me tell you more about us, right? This is enough about me. What do you think about me? And really, when we're thinking of story, and storytelling, by the way, has this huge buzz around it right now, and it's almost become this meaningless buzzword, right? Especially in B2B, right, where we're thinking like, what really story? Are we really storytellers? And the answer is yes. And what I like to think of, so I grew up through just telling stories I'm an English lit grad and all of that, and the key to a story is, and what I learned in English literature and through my days as a screenwriter and all of that is that at the end of the day, a story is an argument. It is an argument that you tell and give in an entertaining, informative, engaging way that ultimately proves its point. And so when you're thinking about your story, your business story, what is your argument to the world? And we talked a little bit about this when we talked about, your differentiator, what makes you unique in the market. And that's really it. It's like, why are you in business to begin with? What is your argument to the world about the point of view of what it is you do? And once you do that and you marry that up with what does the audience need, well, now you've got the start of a story. In other words, if I look out into the audience and I see that they need something, they need education, they need to be entertained, they need to be inspired, they need to be pulled along, they need to be more professional in their career, we want to build more smarter, savvier marketers, whatever it is, figure out what that need is, and then what is your argument about that? How do you believe that you're different about that? What do you think about the world? And having a distinct point of view. Now, this is the part where everybody kind of freaks out a little bit because, especially the salespeople, because when you say you're going to take a great example of this, by the way, is a white paper, right? So many white papers I'll read these days are like, you go, wow, that's really great. That's you took a stand there. You took a distinct point of view. And then it goes to legal, and it goes to the brand people, and it goes to somebody else, and they all freak out because you're actually saying like things, and everybody freaks out, and then the white paper comes out, and it's still 5,000 words, but it's, just a bunch of mush. And so the sales guy will say to you things like, we can't say that, somebody might disagree with it, and that's the whole point, is that if we're going to be right for someone, we have to be willing to be wrong for someone. We have to take a distinct point of view on the world, and ultimately that's our story. What is it that we want to say? What is it that we want to argue for that is actually something that our customers will align with and find value in? And whether that's you're teaching somebody something, in a certain particular way, whether it's you're inspiring somebody in a certain particular way, or whether it's you're educating or entertaining someone in a particular way, that's the real key. One wonderful way to ask if you're actually doing that is to do what I call the 5 whys. I don't call it the 5 whys. The 5 whys are a well-recognized technique, but doing the 5 whys technique is a great way to do that. And what I'll teach clients to do is say, come up with an idea. I want to do a blog for my customers on how easy it is to, make paper mache. And you go, great. Why does the audience care about that? And then they say, well, because they care about that because their moms or their dads, and they want to make something for their kids on Saturday mornings and like that. Great. Why do they care about that? And you keep working through the why do they care about that until you get to something really interesting, or quite frankly, you don't. In many cases, you'll go through the 5 whys and you'll go, yeah, that wasn't a great idea. And it's a really great way to flush out whether it's a good idea or a bad idea, because you'll ultimately get to something, and you can really see it in the nature of the questions. You just keep asking, why does the audience care? Why does the audience care? Why does the audience care? And if you get to something deeper, if you get to something really interesting about why that audience would care, now you've got a story. Now all you have to do is apply your argument to that story, and now you've got something really of value and different, quite frankly.
Yeah, so I'm hearing the story having kind of a macro and a micro definition, in the sense that it's overall part of your plan and almost blends into the content marketing mission statement. But then you're also talking at it as with the story on an individual article per article or blog post per blog post basis. Did I hear that right? And does it kind of, do both? I mean, is that what we're talking about? Like your over?
You absolutely. So I do that 5 whys exercise. I do it every time I write a blog post. I do it every time I write a white paper. I do it every time I do an entire brand strategy for a company. Because that's at its core, what we're trying to do is, so there's a great video out on YouTube about Steve Jobs in 1997. It's just this awesome video where he talks about the biggest lesson he learned when he came back to Apple. And it was, you start with the customer experience. He said most of the time when we think about creating stuff, and he meant like advertising and PR materials, but I'll just broaden it out to say content. Most of the time what we say is, we've got this cool thing and we need to help describe the value of it and why it's important to audiences. And he said that's exactly the opposite of what you should do. He said, because guess what? Your customer doesn't need to know that thing that you need them to know. They need to know what they want to know. And so what we want to do is start with the customer experience. What is it that they want? What is it that they need? What is it that would help them the most? Start with the customer experience and then work backward. And that's what you're doing when you ask the 5 whys, is asking yourself, why do they care? Why do they care? Why do they care? To see if that's something we can actually deliver to them. In other words, if I'm trying to deliver value to you, what I wouldn't ask myself is, what do I need to say, and what, of all the list of things I need to say, what would Dave find the most valuable? I would rather say, what are the things that Dave needs to find valuable, and then figure out how it does or doesn't match up with what I need to say. It's a subtle but very important difference, because to your point, at that macro level, this can be the entirety of all of the kinds of experiences we would create, or it can be literally down to the blog post level if you wanted to, to take it all the way down to that level. If you can ask yourself when you're writing a blog post, why does my customer care about this? Do they really care about this? Or am I just writing something that I feel is really important? And if the answer to that is, then you go, great, let's not write it. Let's stop. Let's not do it. Let's not waste our time. Let's figure out what the customer needs first, and then figure out if that's something we want to write about.
All right. Very good explanation. All right, let's move on. We're running a little bit short on time, so wanted to do want to finish this all because there's 5 steps. We're done 3. So the process. What advice can you give here, and can you clear up any confusion you have seen over the years with this? Also, what are some of the main items you want to consider as you structure your processes or processes?
Sure, and I'll make this quick because this is an easy one to describe. Basically, this is exactly what we talked about at the beginning and the top of this show, which is content marketing is not a project. It is not a campaign. This is an ongoing function. we are creating an owned media experience that should theoretically last forever. This is not something that we're going to do for a month and then stop, or do for 6 weeks and then stop. This is something that we're building. It looks much more like a product than it does a campaign or a project. And so with that in mind, content marketing as a business case needs to be treated as a process, a function in the business. It is something that people or persons do. It is not something that we do as a project within advertising or a project within direct marketing. It is a separate function and approach, and if we don't understand it as such, we'll ultimately get into that thing I talked about at the beginning of the show, which is that we do asset after asset after asset after asset, and some of them are good and some of them are not, but they're only measured in context with whatever campaign they're supporting, and not as in terms of the longer view of building an audience that we can monetize over time. So it's a function, it's a process, it's not a project.
Okay. Now, at the Masterclass, I do remember you talking about different categories to organize so you can execute everything successfully. Yeah. Can you touch on that real quick?
Sure. Yeah. So there's different ways to do it, right? So as you start thinking about this function, one of the key things is, maybe you're a marketing department of one, and so, it just literally becomes some percentage of your job becomes focused on this function, this idea, not one thing that you create to support everything else you're doing, but a percentage of your job becomes focused on this. But if you're a team, if you have a marketing team, you can look at a couple of different ways to structure this, right? The most common that we see are what we call the Center of Excellence group, where content marketing is a function that is separate, right? It is a group. Think of it like the content marketing department, where it supports the business, right? It supports the business in all things content marketing that would go on. So that's a separate group. Rarer, I will say, but growing in popularity these days as content marketing grows. Then there's sort of what I call the hybrid network, which are an integrated network where content marketing is kind of an integrated, so call it a virtual team, where everybody in different product groups or across PR, sales, marketing, et cetera, has some part of their job focused on content marketing, and they meet as a more virtual team or a virtual department or a virtual group to help the rest of the organization become really smart with content marketing approaches. And that's more common these days because of the way the companies are siloed and the way that departments are structured. It's more difficult, I will tell you, just because of the integration and the participation and collaboration and all of that to make it really clear. But it can also be one of the strongest ways because you're truly integrated into the whole company rather than sort of becoming the risk in the Center of Excellence group, which is becoming a risk of becoming a silo unto yourself. So those are the two most popular common ways that we see. The one that we see most commonly as the biggest problem is something I call the Rebel framework, which is basically everybody in every product group and every group, somebody in PR, somebody in product A, somebody in sales, somebody in demand gen marketing, and somebody over here in digital marketing. Well, they all have their own content marketing strategy, and they're all off doing their own thing. And that's very common in bigger businesses as the way that it's sort of organically grown up, and it's the one that needs to get fixed the most.
That's interesting. Yeah, and I think you're right. I think that's probably 95% of them are built that way. So yeah, I mean, there's some good pointers to go back and really wrangle that back in. All right, Final step. Measurement, right? I know you can measure 100, if not a million things if you want to, but can you let the listeners know the main metrics that, in your opinion, that should be paid attention to and measured on an ongoing basis?
I like to think of them in three tiers. So the one that gets the most often neglected, because we're so focused on vanity metrics these days, the ones that come out of our Google dashboards and the ones that come out of our Marketo dashboards and all of that, page views and likes and follows and conversion rates and all that. Those are just metrics, right? So that's second tier. The first tier that I like to talk about are goals, our progress toward goals. And I like to look at goals across four categories, and I call them the 4 C's. One, competency. Can an owned media audience make us a more competent organization? In other words, can we use the data that we're getting to make us smarter about the other things we're doing in marketing? A very simple example of this is, can we look at the visitors and subscribers that we're getting to our blog and understand, do some tests across paid media to see which paid media outlets are actually giving us the best types of customers, the ones that match our demographics the best? Can we optimize our media spend using the data that we glean out of our content marketing program? That's making us a smarter company. Can it deliver us more valuable databases? That's making us a smarter company. Better, the example that I use with the technology company is making us a more competent organization about how we do all the other types of marketing. The second is campaign value. Campaign value is the one that we're usually most focused on. More leads, better leads, more valuable customers, less customer churn rate, those kinds of things. Those are all about supporting direct marketing campaigns through content and being able to do that in a more optimized way. The third is customer value. Can we actually look at developing a more valuable customer over time? In other words, the customers that we generate through content marketing, do they end up spending more? Do they end up staying longer? Do they end up advocating our, higher net promoter scores? Do they become better customers over time because we're adding in this more valuable experience called content marketing? And the fourth is cash, and this is the one that Joe and I are actually writing a new book about. But this is, can we actually start to generate cash? When we think about, the quintessential example of this is Red Bull, right? So any content marketing discussion always inevitably talks about Red Bull in some form. But if you go talk to Red Bull Media House, they will tell you they're actually not a content marketing organization. They'll tell you they're a for-profit business. They actually sell their content, they sell advertising, they sell, their content as a profitable business part of Red Bull. And then, yes, they also happen to be a very, very effective way that Red Bull takes their product to market. So can we actually generate cash or mitigate costs using the fact that we have an audience that other people may want to get in front of, and there are ways to look at that. So those are goals. Then underneath that, we have the key KPIs, the key performance indicators. Those are our metrics that support our progress toward those goals. And we can look at things like, okay, great, if we've got a goal of better customers or becoming more competent, what are the key metrics that actually help us achieve that? Is it more time on site? Is it our RSS feeds? Is it our email subscriber database numbers? Is it our time on site? Those are the key performance indicators. And then underneath that, we have what I call audience indicators, basically just helping us determine whether we're doing smart things in editorial or managing our content property well. Those are things like Twitter followers and Facebook likes and page views and all visitor numbers and all those kinds of things, where we look at those on a day-by-day or week-by-week basis to help us understand how we're progressing toward improving our key KPIs, which of those, of course, help us improve our goal numbers. And if you can segment like that and start looking at measurement like that, you will be so much better off in terms of building a better business case for content marketing.
Yeah, what about keyword phrase, keyword, organic SEO growth? Because that's the hidden gem in all of this, even if some of these other things aren't happening for you, like you're mentioning, like say you're not really growing a subscriber base, or you're not, you're not doing that, right, and which is a big one. But there's still that side benefit of, content marketing is the best SEO tool around. It's done consistently and correctly, on site, on page, and off, and correctly, done. You're just going to, that's the best way, you can do an SEO strategy, in my opinion. Do you pay attention to that as well?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so, I pay attention when it's important, right? Keyword success and SEO success, I definitely put in that secondary bucket. It is definitely a key performance indicator, given if I had a goal where organic was an important goal, right? So if I started noticing, in other words, if I see that most of my customers, my most valuable customers, are coming through, basically paid, or they're coming through other mechanisms other than organic search, I'm not going to place a great deal of importance on it. I want to write for I'm writing for my optimal customer. I'm not writing and creating content just to rank higher in search engine results. That, if all I'm getting through organic search are looky-loos or, quite frankly, students that are looking for my content or those kinds of things, I kind of don't care about going from page 2 to page 1 on Google search and the amount of effort it's going to take to do that. So key performance indicator of organic search, if it's part of my overall goal to have more organic search traffic because it affects the way that my costs or my revenues? Absolutely, yes. It becomes a key metric for me to look at to support that goal.
Gotcha. Yeah, great point. Great point. For some people, it's everything, and for some people, it's hardly nothing.
It's nothing.
You know?
It's nothing. Yeah. Right. It's nothing.
Gotcha. Awesome. Wow, that was a lot of good information. I guess just a fun question to end with here. Do you have any one big prediction for the content marketing landscape in the near or distant future?
Yes, I think, so I've gone on record as saying, one of the ways that your audience may think about this is that, one of the things that tends to get looked at is that this is so overwhelming to build, right? Oh my gosh, it's going to be so incredibly hard to build this. And one of the things that we've been seeing of late, and I definitely predict more of in the future, is that more companies and brands, and this isn't just a big company thing, we're seeing small companies do this too, which is acquire their way in, right? So acquire a blog, acquire a small media company, acquire a small publisher, and become give them a jump start into content marketing from both a talent as well as an audience side. And I think you're going to see a lot more of that in the future is companies acquiring their way into this. Either, I just worked with a company the other day to acquire a one-person blog, and she was doing great. This blog was amazing. She had 25,000 subscribers. She was delivering incredible value. It aligned exactly with what this business wanted to do. She was really kind of tired of running her own business and not making a ton of money, and so she was happy to come on as an employee now. And so they basically hired the woman, acquired the blog along with it, and now they have a great, wonderful content marketing program by basically acquiring a small media company, which in this case was just a simple blog. So it'll become a big thing this year, I think.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, awesome. Robert, how can people continue to learn from you?
The easiest place to get me is my website, which is robertrose.net, or contentadvisory.net, which is where I sort of share out this kind of stuff, but otherwise robertrose.net has all the links to my books and all that kind of stuff too.
Wonderful. What about Twitter? Do you tweet a lot?
I do. I'm on the Twitter. I'm an @Robert_Rose.
@Robert_Rose, just as it sounds. All right. Awesome, Robert. Yeah. Appreciate it. I really enjoyed our time today, and until next time.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.